The first thing I want to talk about in this episode are two different deadlines by which you may need to take certain types of action depending on the type of loans that you have or the type of payment plan that you're trying to end up with. And the first of those dates is July 1st, 2026. So we're going to talk about the two groups of people who need to pay attention to that date. The first group of people who need to pay attention to that date are people who have student loans that are not direct loans. And that's really important because direct loans are the only loans that are eligible for many of the income-driven repayment plans, but they're also the only loans that are eligible for public service loan forgiveness as well. Now, the good news is if you're under the age of 35, you probably already have direct loans only, but let's talk about the people who are in a different circumstance. If you have, for example, an FFEL loan or a Perkins loan that you want to be eligible for income-driven repayment plan forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness, you need to have consolidated those loans by July 1st of 2026. And the reason is, after that point in time, if you either consolidate your loans or apply for a new federal student loan, the only two options that you'll have for repayment are a standard repayment plan that, based on the amount that you owe, will be a repayment period of anywhere from 10 to 25 years, or the repayment assistance plan. Repayment assistance after July 1st, 2026 for new borrowers, which a consolidated loan would constitute a new borrower. You only have access to that plan in terms of income-driven repayment. That's it. Now, it's also important to understand that if you already have direct loans, you actually want to be very cautious in consolidating a student loan. We've talked about this in past episodes. During the Biden administration, they made a change where if you consolidated two or more loans that had previous credit towards income-driven repayment or public service loan forgiveness, they would give that newly consolidated loan credit based on the weighted average of the loans in the pot. There's no need to talk about, like how that works because it's another episode for another day. The problem is that prior to the Biden administration, we don't know if they're using those rules, but we think that they are using those pre-Biden era rules. If you consolidated student loans, it didn't matter how much credit you had towards forgiveness. That new loan was granted 0 credits. You had to start from scratch. And we've seen some people prior to those changes where they consolidated a loan that had 7-8 years worth of credit towards public service loan forgiveness, unaware of the fact that once it was completed, they were starting from scratch. So if you don't have to consolidate your loans, you don't want to do it because we don't know what the circumstances will be in terms of that granted credit. The only scenario where you may potentially want to go ahead and pull the trigger is if you have that old FFEL or Stafford or Perkins loan that you're wanting to be considered. That's the first group that needs to pay attention by July 1st of 2026. The next group that needs to pay attention by July 1st of 2026 are Parent Plus borrowers. And this is huge, although it's not as devastating as it was originally proposed. Originally, what they were planning to do was, at the time this bill was passed, if you were not, by some people's interpretation, on the income contingent repayment plan for your Parent Plus loan, you would lose access to all income-driven repayment plans immediately, which also means you would lose access to public service loan forgiveness. Thankfully, they have extended that to July 1st, 2026. Another thing that they were proposing was they were not going to allow you to have a loan that was in forbearance put on that plan. They also were potentially not going to allow a double consolidated loan to be on those plans either. So it was just a really, really tricky way to try to navigate during that period of time. Here's where they landed in the final version of the bill that was passed today. If you have a double consolidated loan, if you have a Parent Plus loan that you've consolidated a single time, it really doesn't matter. As long as by July 1st, 2026, you are on an income-driven repayment plan, they will allow you to move on to either the old or new version of income-based repayment, which we'll talk about shortly, or the repayment assistance plan. So essentially, if you're in a position where you need to consolidate your Parent Plus loans in order to become eligible, you need to make sure that is done by July 1st, 2026. So it's a completely different circumstance than the group we just told to be very cautious. With Parent Plus borrowers, if you're not in a position to have that repayment plan, you need to take care of it immediately because you don't know how long it's going to take to do any consolidations or to move into a new repayment plan. So let's break that down into people based on their circumstance. If you have a Parent Plus loan that you've never consolidated, you only have to consolidate it one time in order to sign up for the income contingent repayment plan, which counts as an income-driven repayment plan and is eligible for public service loan forgiveness if that's what you're pursuing. Now, as odd as it sounds, based on the way federal student loans work, even if you only have one student loan, you can technically consolidate a single student loan. It's a very quick process as compared to trying to do a double consolidation, which is much more involved. If you have already done a double consolidation of your federal student loans, then I would sign up for the income-driven repayment plan with the lowest payment plan possible, because eventually they're going to move you on to a plan that has a potentially higher payment.